Hello, students in Mrs. Maldonado's class. This is for the third graders for their math lesson. It's Module 6, Lesson 7, Problem Set, and you are working on collecting and displaying data. Begin by typing your name in the name box and the date. Remember, you can watch this video and pause and go back and forth between opening this tab and of the video and opening the tab of your work. This work can be found on Mrs. Maldonado's Google Classroom. The directions say, read the questions carefully. Write your answers in the boxes below. Mrs. Y's class grows beans for a science experiment. The students measure the heights of their bean plants to the nearest 1/4 inch and record the measurements as shown below. Use the data to complete the line plot. Here's the information, and it says height of bean plants. And then everybody in the class wrote down how tall, when they measured their bean plant, what their number was, what the measurement was. And so now we're going to take the information from the chart where it says height of bean plants and put it here to make a line plot. The beginning, it says the title. The title of the chart is the same. We're going to just copy what we have there. We're going to write heights of bean plants in inches. So I just copied the title from the information from the data collected and put it into my chart. Now it says label. And then the X equals 1. And the label will be an X. Oh, no, I'm not sure what we'll write in label yet. Let's go back to that. But the easiest way for me to do this is to do one box at a time. So the first box here says 2 1/4 inch. So I find 2 1/4 here and I put an X because that goes to that box, and then I can cross that out to know that we used it. The next one is 2 3/4. So I'll click in the 2 3/4 box and type an X. And then I'll cross it out because we used it. The next one is 3 1/4. So I'll go down here to 3 1/4 and place an X. And then I can cross it out because I know I used it. The next one says 1 3/4. So I come down here and put an X, 1 3/4. And then I'll cross it out because I used it. 1 3/4 again. And so I'm not going to put an X next to it. I'm going to put an X. If I hit return or enter on my keyboard, it'll put the X underneath it. And now I have 2 X's in that box because 2 of the plants measured 1 3/4 inches. Again, another 1 3/4. So my cursor is blinking here. I'm going to hit enter, and then I'll type another X. And then I can cross that one out. And then it says, the next box says 3. So I'll come down to the 3 inches box and I'll place an X. And then I'll cross it out. 2 1/2 inches. So I'll come to the 2 1/2 inch box and type an X. And then I'll cross it out. 3 1/4 inches. Now I already have one here, so I'm going to put the cursor there. I'm clicking after the X. I hit enter, and then I can type another X. 2 1/2. Again, I already have a 2 1/2, so I'll put the cursor there till it blinks, and I'll hit enter. And then I can type another X, and then cross that one out. Then it says 2, so I'll go to the 2 box and type an X, and then I'll cross it out. 2 1/4. We already have an X there, so I'll click so it's blinking after the X, hit enter, and I can type in another X, cross it out. 3 inches. So 3, I already have an X here, so I'll have to hit return or enter and type another X. And then I can cross it out. You don't have to cross it out. This is just for me, so I know which one I already did. 2 1/4. Again, we have a 2 1/4. We have 2 of them already, so I'll place my cursor there where it's blinking. I'll hit enter and type another X. The next one says 3 inches, so I'll go to my 3 box, put the cursor after the X, hit enter, and then I can type another X. And we're on our last row here of data to put into our chart. 2 1/2 inches, so I'll go to 2 1/2 inches. After the X, it's blinking, and then I'll hit enter. I could type another X and cross it out. 3 1/4 inches. So I'll go to 3 1/4. Again, I can put the cursor there, hit enter, type another X, cross it out. 1 3/4 inches. I'll come back here, 1 3/4, hit enter, and another X. 2 3/4 inches is my next one. So I'll go here, hit enter, and another X. And the final one says 2. So I'll go to the 2, hit an X, or hit enter, and then type in another X. All right. And so now I have my chart filled in. And the label is height of plants in inches. Okay. And X is 1 plant. So if I'm looking at my table now, I have 1 3/4. That means I have 4 X's or 4 plants that are 1 3/4 inches, 2 plants, 2 X's that are 2 inches, 3 X's or 3 plants that are 2 1/4 inches, 3 X's that are 2 1/2 inches, 2 plants or 2 X's that are 2 3/4 inches, 3 X's that tells me they're 3 inches, 3 X's that tells me 3 1/4 inches. All right, so now I'll use this information to answer the questions, and you'll have to scroll down a little bit. It's on a new page. How many bean plants are at least 2 1/4 inches tall? So not asking me to count how many are 2 1/4. They're saying at least that tall. So I'll go up here to my information. Let me erase this so it's not confusing. And they're asking me how many plants are at least 2 1/4. Well, here's 2 1/4. 2 is shorter than 2 1/4. So these plus all of these are at least 2 1/4 inches tall. And so all I need to do is count all of these X's. So it'd be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So I have 14 plants that are at least 2 1/4 inches tall. How many bean plants are taller than 2 3/4 inches? So let's go back up here and I'll erase this. And now I'm looking for 2 3/4. They're at least 2 3/4. Let me read that question again just to double check. How many plants are taller than 2 3/4? So I'm not going to count 2 3/4 because I want the plants that are bigger or taller than 2 3/4. So here's 2 3/4. 3 is bigger and 3 1/4 is bigger. So they're taller than 2 3/4. So I'll count the X's. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So there are 6 plants that are taller than 2 3/4 inches. What is the most frequent measurement? So they're asking you which one had the most X's. So let's erase this. And just by quickly looking at this line plot here, or this box chart, I can see that the plant that is 1 3/4 inches had 4 X's, and that's the most. So my answer is which one had the most? It was the 1 3/4 inch plants. So 1, 3, 1, and I put a space, and then I hit 3, and then the line fourths. 1 3/4, which is the most frequent measure, 1 3/4 inches. All right. George says that most of the bean plants are at least 3 inches tall. Is he right? So let's look up here. And George thinks most of the plants are at least 3 inches tall. Let's go back and read that question again. George says that most of the bean plants are at least 3 inches tall. Is he right? Well, does it look like this is the most plants? Probably not, because only 6 of them, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, are 3 inches or taller. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 plants. All of these are shorter than 3 inches. So now George isn't correct because only 6 are taller than 3 inches, or at least 3 inches tall. So is he right? My answer is no. Then it says explain. And so we just did that. We're going to write only 6 plants are at least 3 inches tall. 14 plants are shorter than 3 inches tall. So no, not the most of them aren't there. Most of them are shorter than 3 inches. Number 5, Savannah was absent the day the class measured the heights of their bean plants. When she returns, her plant measures 2 2/4 inches tall. Can Savannah plot the height of her bean plant on the class plot? So now we have to look to see, was there 2 2/4 inches? So we'll go back up to our chart. Let me erase that since that's from the last question. All right. And Savannah's plant was 2 2/4. Now I don't see this exact number on here, 2 2/4, but I do know that 2 2/4 is a fraction that I can simplify. All right, so let's think about this. If you know how to simplify, that means you have to divide by the greatest common factor on the top and the bottom, and the greatest common factor for both of these is 2. So 2 divided by 2 is 1, and 4 divided by 2 is 2. So that means 2/4 and 1/2 are the same, but we could probably understand that better if we drew a picture. So let's draw a picture for 2/4. The easiest way to do that is draw in a square, and I'll break the square into 4 pieces. That's our denominator. That tells me how many pieces, 1, 2, 3, 4. The top numbers tells me how many to color in. So I colored in 2 out of 4 pieces, or 2/4. But I can also do this again for 1/2, and you'll see that they're the same. I could draw a square the same size, and I can cut it in 2 pieces or in half. And then I color in one of them. And so if I was thinking if this was a cracker or something square that you eat, or a piece of paper, this part and this part are the same size, and so that they are equal fractions. So these are equivalent fractions. So yes, 2 2/4, can she plot it? Yes. She could also plot it on 2 1/2. And so let's go down to the answer. Can Savannah plot her bean plot on the line, class? The answer is yes. And then we're going to explain. 2 2/4 is the same or equal to 2 1/2. So Savannah can plot her X on the space for 2 1/2, because 2 1/2 and 2 2/4 are the same number. And I believe that's the last question. I hope this video helped.